Have you ever read one of those massive internet takedowns? You know the kind? It feels incredibly convincing in the moment, but later you catch yourself wondering, wait, was any of that actually proven? Well, today we are taking a masterclass in critical thinking. We're going to deconstruct exactly how these online narratives are built, step by step. We'll isolate the real facts, measure the crazy leaps of logic, and demand a true chain of custody to see the exact moment a verified fact mutates into a wild conspiracy. Now, this question right here introduces the absolute core trap of speculative internet attacks. It's this weird premise that a total absence of evidence is somehow definitive proof of a highly competent, invisible cover-up. We're going to see exactly how a professional investigator dismantles that kind of circular logic today. To do that, we are opening up a real case file. This is a confidential content analysis by retired Sergeant Grumpy. He methodically evaluates a dossier written by an author named Francis O'Neill, which targets the cartoonist Bob Moran. Now, Grumpy's job here isn't to decide if O'Neill's gut feeling is right or wrong. Instead, he treats this dossier like an intelligence brief, testing its structural integrity to see if the case would actually stand up to serious cross-examination. Let's dive in. Okay, Section 1, the core accusation. Before we look at any evidence, we have to know exactly what deception is being alleged. In legal terms, the corpus delicti. O'Neill's explicit claim is that Bob Moran isn't a genuine dissident at all, but is actually controlled opposition, basically an actor with a hidden orchestrated agenda, accused of financial irregularities and bizarre conduct. Let's be clear, this is a massive claim. He's not just calling Moran a hypocrite, he is alleging a deliberate, high-level deception. Moving on to Section 2, finding the anchor facts. Every single speculative smear campaign on the internet starts with a microscopic, verifiable truth. We call these anchor facts. You need these anchors to give the illusion that the whole story is grounded in reality. And to O'Neill's credit, he does successfully catalog some genuine, contradictory public behaviors by Moran. The dossier meticulously logs these observable events, Moran disproportionately eulogizing a minor online figure named Ed the Techie, making weird exceptions to his own strict art policies, holding totally conflicting views on public figures like Lucy Connolly, and attending the Travelers Club, which is a high-establishment venue that directly conflicts with his anti-establishment brand. These are the anchors. They are real, they happened. The dossier also presents one really striking piece of quantitative evidence, over £1.2 million in artwork sales. But as the Sergeant Grumpy points out in his review, this financial data is dropped in without enough context. There's no time frame for the sales, no breakdown of private commissions versus open sales. Is it suggestive? Absolutely, but on its own, it's not definitive proof of a covert payroll. Which brings us to Section 3, the speculative leap. We have our anchor facts. But hold on tight, because we are about to measure the massive chasm between reality and creative writing. This is where we cross from what is provably true to what is dangerously inferred. Grumpy highlights a fatal flaw here. O'Neill's dossier completely ignores simpler, boring explanations. Could Moran's behavior just be simple hypocrisy? Maybe greed? Poor judgment? A sentimental blind spot for a buddy online? The dossier skips right over these perfectly plausible everyday human flaws and catapults straight into malicious intent and government infiltrator. Guys, that intervening space isn't a theory, it's creative writing. The Sergeant Grumpy points out that proving guilt by association gives us absolutely zero direct evidence of coordination, payment, or a specific act of deception by Moran's alleged handlers. What is the mechanism of control here? Why would he be controlled opposition? There's no endgame presented. Without a clear motive or a proven link in a chain of command, leaping from this guy is a hypocrite to this guy is an espionage asset remains entirely speculative. Next up, Section 4, tracing the chain of custody. So how exactly does gossip become a formal accusation? Well, we have to demand the chain of custody for these claims to see how they get laundered. In any real investigation, knowing where information came from is just as important as the information itself. Grumpy finds this case is built heavily on back-of-the-pub gossip and unverifiable hearsay from unnamed people within a highly fractious online community. It relies on anonymous friends of Bob Moran. On top of that, O'Neill, the author, is an active participant in the drama he's describing, creating a massive conflict of interest. We're watching a single, unsubstantiated opinion get bounced around an echo chamber until it's laundered into a fact. Grumpy is brutal here. He points out that without on-the-record testimony, you're just documenting rumors, and that makes the entire foundation of the smear inherently unreliable. An investigator's actual job is separating gossip from actionable intelligence. Anonymous sources might point you in a direction, they're a lead, but they cannot be the load-bearing walls of a definitive conclusion. Alright, Section 5, the cover-up fallacy. This brings us back to that critical error in thinking we talked about at the start, where the absolute lack of evidence is somehow twisted into proof of a brilliant conspiracy. Sergeant Grumpy's report explicitly calls out the author's profound confirmation bias. The dossier definitely establishes a pattern of contradiction, sure, but instead of letting the evidence support a charge of inconsistent, the author twists it to imply infiltrator. They never made a serious attempt to explore less sinister explanations. They just assumed a worst, and that's a bar of proof that simply hasn't been met. And here's the thing, if you seal all the exits and decide that every piece of missing evidence is actually just proof of an amazing cover-up by this controlled opposition, your theory cannot be tested. Grumpy emphasizes this. If a lack of direct communication is brushed off because the handlers are just too smart to leave a paper trail, you are no longer investigating. You're operating on blind faith. An unfalsifiable hypothesis is analytically worthless. Finally, Section 6, the final verdict. Time to close the case file. After parsing the anchor facts, the leaps of logic, and the bias, where are we? Well, as this table summarizes, the author absolutely proves Moran's public persona is riddled with contradictions. They did a great job collating public statements and dates. They successfully validated that questions about Moran's associations and finances are totally legitimate. But the failures, they're catastrophic for the core claim. The evidence is entirely circumstantial. They completely fail to prove motive or intent beyond a reasonable doubt, failing to cross the line from highly suspicious to proven. Grumpy leaves the original author with these essential recommendations. Move from hearsay to testimony. Find the actual money trail. And most importantly, play devil's advocate to your own case. What if Moran is just a hypocrite who likes making money? You have to rule the mundane stuff out first, because an intelligent adversary wouldn't even need a conspiracy theory here. Simply pointing out the hypocrisy would do the job, without leaving the dossier open to being dismissed as a totally unproven smear campaign. And I will leave you with that thought to apply the next time you encounter what looks like a flawless internet takedown. Are you looking at a carefully constructed narrative of facts, or are you just looking at a few anchor points stitched together by the invisible string of someone's creative writing? Always demand the chain of custody, measure the leap, and beware the cover-up fallacy.